So, Trustee Zia? Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Malulu.
Thank you very much for a very thorough and comprehensive report. I have one question because I get the impression that you've been doing this a long time and you know what you're doing. So forgive me if you don't know the answer, but I'm curious. When you talked about the disproportionate number of students based on their ethnicity and their performance, you mentioned that Filipino students tend to have a higher success rate. Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. And you know, I honestly, that it's on that one metric of persistence. We have not dug in to identify what some of the differences among our Asian populations are, how they're experiencing our classrooms. I know it's of interest to many of the stakeholders across the campus, so it's something we can add to the slate of research that we're doing. I think, though, that kind of information we need to gather is more qualitative, so it does take a bit of time.
Sure, I appreciate that response. When you do find out, if you could report back, that would be great. But I would love to find out why a certain population of students, regardless of their ethnic background, but why a certain population would fare better, especially in terms of persistency, and what we can do to duplicate that in the other ethnic groups. So if we've got a gap in ethnic group performance success, whatever one group is doing, let's take that and try to implement programs to help other ethnic groups. Thank you.
Yeah, and might I add that our student equity committee has been hard at work over the last, probably 18 months, 2 years now, to identify those exact instances and try to better understand what our students are going through. I mean, a lot of it is what they come to campus with, but what we're trying to identify is then what does the college have control over to better support students when they are experiencing disproportionate impact, and also in replicating the successes as you had talked about.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, Doug?
I think it would be helpful to know why the cohort that we're looking at is the 9-10 cohort. I understood these were 6-year cohorts, but it almost seems like ancient history.
I know, Doug. I know.
But there are reasons this, and I mean, there's some reasons for this. I'd like to understand it better. Why is it 7 years? Is it a lag in getting the data? Is it just
Actually, I can tell you that this scorecard was released last spring, and we usually present this during the summer retreat, which was not possible this past year. And so this was our last chance to submit this actually before the new scorecard is released. So the 2017 scorecard will soon be available to you, and hopefully we will be able to agendize it this summer so that you guys can get it in a more timely way. But I think that your comment about the length of time it frustrates me too, because I know that there is so much hard work going, particularly when we're talking about our basic skills students, that's happening right now in the classrooms that these data will never reflect because we're looking at an older cohort. And so, you know, it's our office's prerogative and job to make sure that we're providing other evidence apart from this mandated scorecard to you and to other stakeholders so that as a community, we better understand what's happening for our students that we're serving now.
In fact, I understand that it's not only mandated that we collect the data this way, that's from the state, and that says we need to have this accountability, ability to compare among institutions and whatnot, although even that's fraught with a little bit of controversy.
Quick question.
But that we're required to report it to the board as well in a public forum as another aspect of the accountability that we're required to have, and I think it's important to know that.
Yeah, I will be submitting the minutes of this meeting to the Chancellor's office as evidence that we did these problems. Yeah.
Okay, Trustee Zia, we got 3 minutes left.
Just have a quick question dovetailing on, excuse me, the trustee Otto's point. You mentioned that we collect data that is more recent, or did I misunderstand you? That is outside of the scorecard. Do we have any data that we're tracking on a real-time basis?
Yes, so the Office of Institutional Research is continually looking at different types of research questions. I can use the basic skills metrics as an example, and we are looking at throughput on more a shorter time frame so that you can get information about students who are hopefully still here, who we can do something about. It's also important to know that the new strategic plan includes a set of metrics that capture the student experience from connection, their entry into the college, and through their progression of completion and transfer. You know, those metrics of completion and transfer are so far away, we have to use dated data to be able to measure it. But it's our hope that in including these other metrics that are a little bit closer to a student's experience, we can use more timely data about students who are currently enrolled so that we can make interventions that will support them.
Right. My question was more along the lines of, and then thank you for that response, is are we, is the board going to see at some point this data? I've asked for it a number of times. I want to see the pulse of how our students are doing, not necessarily on completion, obviously, that's a more long lead item, but when it comes to the math component or English or the CTE programs, if we're below state average, that doesn't resonate. We should do better, and I'd like to see more on a real time. It may be draft, but is that something that we can see or have some visibility into?
Yes, the Office of Institutional Effectiveness has produced several briefs last year that are available on our website. We've just
By the way, I
revised
tried to
the-
go, you need a password, so it's not accessible to the public. So that's what I'm asking for something that's accessible publicly, or if, at least for the board, so we can see how our students are seeing. Well, and then the public have the right to know.
The reports that I'm referring to are publicly available, so we just need to make sure that you have the right link so that you can get to
Sure.
them. And we have just revised our newest basic skills brief, and we've vetted them with the appropriate stakeholders across the campus. You know, when that is the one delay that is necessary, is that we want to make sure that the faculty and the department heads and other key campus leaders are able to see the information and sort of help us interpret it and give us the context around it before we release it publicly. But that report should be available now, and we can post it so that you can access it.
So it's not posted currently?
The newest iteration, last year's iteration, is available. The newest one could be in a matter of days. It's ready.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Otto, you have 1 minute.
I don't think I can say my name in 1 minute. So I have a question. Several years ago, a former Superintendent President Oakley said one of the things that we're trying to do is to decrease time to graduation. In the Student Success Scorecard, I know that's not an indicator or anything, but do we collect data on that? What's it look like? Have we decreased the time from enrollment to graduation at all? And what are we doing about giving us some information about that?
In our new strategic plan that I cannot wait to talk to you about, we have a new set of metrics around progress. And these new metrics really try and hone in on our not just students, are they collecting or earning 30 or more units, but are they earning the right 30 units? And not in 6 years, but in a year and a half and in a 3-year time period, so that we can really better understand what's happening with these students. The answer to your question of are we reducing the time currently, I think it's probably no, but we're certainly starting to look at the right information to give us some baseline information so that we can focus on that exact thing with a new strategic plan.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Lauren. It was excellent. Okay, 4.1, Citizens Oversight Committee. Superintendent President Gable, are you going to introduce this?
I certainly can. So we have the chairperson of the Citizens Oversight Committee, Ms. Elaine McDaniel, here, and she will be presenting the annual report that the Citizens Oversight Committee prepared and has looked at and reviewed and recommended to the board as well. So I'll turn it over
Thank
to you,
Anne
Elaine.
Marie. Yes, good evening, trustees. You have the Citizens Oversight Committee annual report, and I am proud to tell you that both the performance and the financial audits were clean. We're on schedule with just about everything. It's pretty exciting, really, and I know all you have to do is walk around campus to see what's happening, but in the report, we also talk about the projects we've completed and the projects that are in process. So there you go. Thank you so much.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, my God, you get a gold star. All right, now, are there questions?
I just had a comment, President
Trustee Zia?
Baxter. First of all, I hope the rationing on the time didn't affect your ability to present, but we are in a tight schedule. I just wanted to thank you, Elaine, and the rest of the Oversight Committee on your dedication to this effort. This is something that's very important to all of us, including myself, to see how we're doing with the bond money. I understand that you have 2 new members of the Oversight
Yes,
Committee.
that is correct.
Can you
And
speak?
unfortunately, I have not met them because at the last meeting, I had what everybody else in the world I had, the 30-day illness. So I have yet to meet them, but I am looking forward to it.
Okay, great. Well, we opened up the process and made it more transparent so more people can serve on that committee with you, and really appreciate the hard work and dedication of your team.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Secretary Jackie reminded me that this is an action item, so I need a motion and a second to approve the
So moved.
report. Trustee Zia, was that you?
Yes.
Okay.
You're accepting the report.
Yeah,
Madam
it's a
Okay.
motion to accept, not approve.
Okay, yes, motion to accept. Thank you, Trustee Otto. And are you seconding that?
Yes.
Okay, so it was moved by Trustee Zia, seconded by Trustee Otto to accept the Citizens Oversight Annual Report.
Virginia Baxter.
Aye.
Jeff Kellogg. Aye. Vivian Malauulu.
Aye.
Doug Otto.
Aye.
And Sunny Zia.
Aye.
Okay, next one is, I turned the page too soon, 4.2 Board Self-Evaluation Survey. Dr. Bagg, I think you're up.
Thank you. See, I need to pull something up real quickly. And first of all, I just want to let you know or point you to what Jackie has provided for you at your desks. The summary results for your board self-assessment from the previous year. And I think you completed those self-assessments over the summer or in October, something like that. Sorry, I'm just getting the technology here. So I've got that ready. Before I present the summary results, I'd like to just briefly provide a little bit of context for the board self-evaluations. So 2 things. First of all, just to remind everybody that this is part of the Accreditation Standard 4 on leadership and governance, and particularly Standard 4C, which pertains to the governing board. And it's 4C10, which states board policies and/or bylaws establish a process for board evaluation. The evaluation assesses the board's effectiveness in promoting and sustaining academic quality and institutional effectiveness. The governing board regularly evaluates its practices and performance, including full participation in board training, makes public the results. The results are used to improve board performance, academic quality, and institutional effectiveness. So really, just like all of the processes for accreditation, that is evaluation for continuous improvement, that's what the college does, and in kind, that's what the board has done with this process as well. In addition, the board has set policy 2018 to also provide for the board's commitment to regularly assessing itself. and using those assessment results to identify strengths and areas that it wants to focus on for improvement and/or setting goals for the board. Typically, we're able to present the assessment results at a time when you're ready to set your new board goals. As you know, you've had other pressing things that you've had to do this year, so that's why we're bringing this to you now. So you may want to take these results and look at them again when you're ready to set the 17 or whatever increment of goals that you want to establish. So we can get into the summary results then. Just as a reminder, there are, and this is an assessment tool that this board has used essentially unchanged for the past several years. There are three main parts to the self-assessment. The first is based on a Likert scale where you respond, and it's focused on four main functions of the board, including the board's policy role. The second is community relations and advocating for the college. The third is board and CEO relations. And the fourth major functional area is the board leadership and organization. The second major part is the board's appraisal of the college's progress, the board's progress against its own goals that it had set prior. And then finally, the last part are open-ended questions. And I know the board has modified these in particular over time, and it's really to collect input on what the board perceives to have been the board's major accomplishments in the last year, suggested improvements for the board's goal-setting process, suggestions for improving the working of the board, setting the top priority for the board and the district for the next year, and identifying what the board can do to improve communications to the community regarding difficult decisions. These were the questions that the board had decided to integrate into the self-assessment. So now, just briefly, I was designated as the person to collect your assessment results and to aggregate them here. So basically, again, a reminder, the scale that you use to respond, 1 indicates strongly degree, 2 somewhat disagreement, 3 somewhat agree, 4 agree, and 5 strongly agree. And what's been tallied here in the cells for, each question has a row. In the cells indicates the number of trustees who responded with either a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 rating. So for the first one, which asks, the board spends sufficient time on planning and providing a vision for the college, you can see that there were there was 1 trustee who identified strongly disagree as their response. 3 trustees chose 4 for agree, and 1 trustee identified strongly agree as the response. So that's just how we've collected the results and summarized them here. And basically, I've averaged them across the board just for a way to kind of compare across the items and the main functions. So you can see the results here, and of course, you're free to, kind of look at these as you wish. I mean, one possible way that you might choose to look at this is where you've got at least average responses that indicate leaning towards disagreement with these statements that are written in a positive way. So you can see for the first function policy role, number 5, you have an average of 2.6, and you can see you have 2 trustees who scored towards the strongly disagree. So that might be an area which relates to number 5 says policy recommendations contain adequate information and are presented so that sufficient time is allowed for study and discussion. So, just a brief overview, one way of looking at this, that might be one of the areas that you might look at in moving forward for the goals efforts to make sure that you feel that you have sufficient time to do that. If we go to the next major function, that is community relations and advocating for the college, here you can see relatively strong scores. Really across the board, there's nothing beneath a 3.0 average. You can also focus on particularly high ratings, the average of 4.8. For item 5, the board advocates college interests to state and national agencies and legislators. And that was almost unanimous across the board. So I think in the interest of time, and you can see these, it's just really providing the summary and making all of these public. Also, sorry, for each of the major functions, I've averaged all of the items. So you can see, sorry, going back to the first function of policy role, the overall average is 3.4. Overall, the next functional role, a little bit higher. Overall average, you can see as a 4.0. The next functional area, board CEO relations. Here again, overall average of 4, relatively high scores. If you were to focus on the lowest in this category, the average 3.4 on the first item was about the board and CEO relationship. And you can see the distribution amongst each of your responses. Finally, the last section for the functional areas, board leadership and organization. Here, if we're to look at potential areas to focus on for improvement, the item board members are given adequate information on the issues on which they are requested to deliberate. Again, an average for that item across board members of 3.0, and you can see you've got 4 of the 5, 3 or below. On the other hand, a relatively high average for the last item. Once a decision is made, board members uphold the decision of the board. Overall average for this functional area is 3.5. Okay. We can move on to the part 2. This is where the board looks at the college's progress. I'm sorry, again, the board's progress with the previous goals that it had set. So these were the 2015-2017 board goals. So you can see the board is being asked to rate really the progress. You can see the scale. 1 is a not yet begun. 2 is the college is in initial stages. 4, 3 in process. 4 nearing completion, and 5 successfully completed. So you can see again the distribution, the count of trustees who identified any one of those progress ratings. So this first one is about the board continuing to support the student success agenda in all of those different ways. Developing the master plan, which we now call the strategic plan, working with the college and community stakeholders to implement and expand the Promise Pathways program, supporting the implementation of the innovation of higher education goals through the Long Beach Promise partnerships, now including the city of Long Beach, and finally supporting the legislative and policy initiatives that align with the goals of the Promise and our partnership. So you can see that there's a little bit of difference in the rating for the degree of progress across the board ratings.
Actually, I think all 3, CTE, student success, and what's the third one? Collegiality, they're all rated identically, meaning there are 3 in the middle range and 1 at the 4 range, 1 at the 5. It's
Yeah.
interesting. That's fascinating statistically, the likelihood that would happen.
And people could argue with all of these that they're ongoing, and to claim completion is kind of a difficult thing to do. But this is the assessment tool we've been working with.
Right.
The next goal is to continue to support the CTE education, workforce development, economic development agenda to strengthen the regional economy. And you can see all of the different components of that. Again, this is a similar, really across all of these, the responses were the same across the trustees. So it appears as though people are recognizing that we're making progress with all of these. And again, for the third major goal, supporting programs to build a more collegial campus community by creating better relations. and communication among all campus stakeholders. Through our leadership development program, I think we pointed before to the LEAD Academy, and expanding opportunities for interaction of the Board of Trustees and campus stakeholders. Again, the same distribution appeared across the trustees. Finally, part 3 is where really we're just capturing the open-ended responses that all of you contributed. The accomplishments in the past year, you can see the LEAD Academy, collective bargaining agreements, communication, community involvement, the passage of Measure LB, lots of different things have been identified, some by multiple trustees. Suggestions that individuals had to improve the board's goal-setting process. So you can see a variety of different perspectives on what is helpful with that. Professional development. You've had some effective professional development that people commented on in the past. So you have an opportunity to digest this and see what your peers also provided. Suggestions to improve the working of the board, continuing retreats and work sessions. And all of your comments are included here. Number 4, the top priority for the board and the district for the next year. And I know that you've established that for your 16-17 goal that's posted on the website, and your activities to hire a new CEO. Continuing to focus on student success, collegiality. And finally, number 5, you can see responses about what the board sees that it can do to improve communication in the community regarding difficult decisions.
It's just design build. That's not the issue. I mean, I could ask for a report on this.
So those are the responses. Really, I think that, with any of these self-assessments, we rely on how we work with those together. Like I said, as you want to use these, potentially with the development of your next set of board goals.
Thank you, Dr. Bagg. Okay, would anyone like to remember 10 minutes? I'm looking at my phone. Okay. Okay, well, I looked at Sunny first, so I'll let her go first. Okay.
Thank you, President Baxter, and thank you, Ava, Dr. Bagg. First of all, I wanted to just acknowledge and ask, I think my assumption is correct, that we've made great strides and improvements since last year. Is that correct as far as our scores goes, or
Yes, I
the
think
averages?
so. I think so.
We're doing pretty good. It shows that we've improved a lot, especially with the culture change of this board. I also did note the point that you brought up as far as board members given adequate information on the issues before we're requested to deliberate. And I think, I was one of the two. This is a while ago, but I just want to thank staff for making improvements there. I know you guys are trying very hard, and I know sometimes I can be a little bit, come across as hard on some of the numbers, but I just wanted to acknowledge that I have seen improvements there, and thank you for making the great strides there. And there's always room for improvement, but I saw that. So of course, in part 3, if there's any doubt ever, the only person probably on this board that bulletizes and enumerates their suggestions is probably the engineer on this board, which is yours truly. I just wanted to really commend our staff about launching the LBCC forums in the community, and that's a huge accomplishment that really helped us. The community has been so excited. My constituents constantly ask about it, and I want to really acknowledge you guys. And then the communication guidelines was very helpful as well. Also, I wanted to commend Trustee Otto for helping us with the retreat that we had with the facilitator Doug Houston. He really was great, and I thank you, Trustee Otto. I think you had a lot to do with it. But you know, and as far as the improvements goes, I know we have a bit of a room to grow. But if we can at some point get updates on how we're doing on job placements or internships for our students. You know, we do set out these goals as part of the promise. I know we made it a little bit more rigorous this time around to make sure that it's got a little bit more teeth. So I'd like to at some point see those statistics with our internships, and then also, of course, my big point was on restoring our classified staff hours and filling those positions that are vacant. I'd like to see that sooner than later. Hopefully we'll get an update soon on that front as well. And lastly, we can always be more transparent, and that's what I see as an improvement or opportunities that we can focus on, and we've made great strides, and I want to applaud all of you, my fellow board members and the staff, and thank you so much for the report.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Zia. Trustee Malauulu.
Thank you, Dr. Bagg. I don't know how you were chosen to compile this information, but they certainly did pick the right person. Thank you for analyzing the data. A couple things I just want to highlight. I thought it was really interesting that in the policy role, in the keyboard functions, the only section that received 2 strongly disagreed, which of course brought the score down to 2.6, that's on page 1, was number 5, policy recommendations containing adequate information. Just like Trustee Zia just brought up, presented so that sufficient time is allowed, and we're kind of given a timeline today in which to discuss. So I know that it's limited. Our board only meets, once a month usually. So I think that's really important, and yet we were able to identify that as a problem. Going to, I believe it's the next page, page 2, that the board advocates college interest to state and national agencies and legislatures receiving such a high mark of a 4.8. I think that's particularly relevant right now because we've just had 2 legislative summits, one at the state level, one at the federal level, and I was able to see firsthand how much work was involved. I know Miles Nevin is in the audience right now, and I know he worked really hard to coordinate. I didn't attend the federal one in DC, but I was at the Sacramento one. And even before I joined the board, I did recognize how much work it takes to get things to pass. In fact, we just had a brief discussion about our effort today. So I'm glad that that was recognized. And then I want to ask a question on page 7, part 3, number 2. And by the way, I kind of chuckled when I read over these. I printed this out last night, and I kind of chuckled because I recognized my own writing in what you said, and I still feel the same way about a lot of these. But number 2, I would just like to know if anything is being done with our recommendations or suggestions. For example, the 3rd bullet, allowing public input of board goals, both in writing or in person, also allowing input in a different forum other than the meetings. Not everyone can attend the meeting. There should be a place for people to be able to submit comments, either email or in person, for inclusion in the meetings. Yes, we get emails, yes, we get messages, but just to make our meetings a little more, I'm not saying let's have a Twitter storm during the meetings, but yesterday during the superintendent president hiring forums, a lot of our faculty and students were unable to attend, and our staff, because they were held during the week and they couldn't work. So in situations like that, we have to be accommodating, and we have to make good use of our resources, whether it's video or online or whatever. We've got to be able to integrate our staff, and I think it should start with the board. So and you don't have to answer, but so what if we make these recommendations, if nothing ever happens? If next year we're gonna write the same recommendation? So I would love to see a movement to integrate those suggestions and to, make things happen that way. That's it, thank you.
Trustee Malulu, I think that's a good point. And when we have our summer retreat, we should hold on to these pieces of paper, because why kill another tree? And then we can talk about that and in developing the board goals. Okay, Trustee Otto, you okay?
Thank you.
Well,
Because you have 2 minutes.
I guess what I would say is that I think the first step to doing something about this is to let us know what the ideas are, and then the board can take whatever appropriate actions there are. I think it's a great suggestion to roll up our sleeves and be a little more social media accessible. And then, look for directions or things that we might do. And as I was listening to some of the comments, I thought, we did have a retreat, but we don't only have to have one retreat a year. We can have more retreats if they're called for, particularly if there are things that are timely or we're worried about particular things, and we can just let the staff know that's important. We can let ourselves know that and schedule things as aren't necessary. And sometimes that's a good idea. I know of a number of colleges in California that hold several retreats a year. In fact, one in Northern California does it on a regular basis, just because it's the way to really grapple with issues. So we've got alternatives to the way we're doing things. In fact, I think that's one of the things that came out of the retreat, was that we saw that other colleges do things differently, and it's available to us. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Bagg. It was excellent.